Washington Post NFL columnist John Clayton with the 5 teams with the most reason to worry after week number 1. Would imagine that Philadelphia doesn't make that list. They beat Atlanta 32-6. They will play San Francisco this week. We'll get some thoughts on that game and more with John Clayton right now, who has 5 teams with the most reason to worry after only 1 week, John. Boy, the NFL season seems to move quick, shorten up, and just change so much. But these 5 teams, let's start with this one, which is very interesting on that list. The Indianapolis Colts, who had very high expectations. They bring in Carson Wentz. What was the scuttlebutt about week 1 with Wentz and the Colts?
Well, Wentz didn't do too bad, but the offensive line was terrible. I mean, certainly you knew they had problems going in. Eric Fisher didn't play because of the Achilles injury. So their backup, Sam Kevy, was missing. But the rest of the line, which is really talented, didn't do well. I think part of it with Quentin Nelson was his bad back. But, Wentz just ended up getting beaten up badly. I mean, he had 3 sacks, 10 quarterback hits. And as the game went on, you can see him starting to wear down, and that held things back. And then, of course, the other thing is that as good as the plan was to run the football because they've got Nyheim, Hines in the backfield, Jonathan Taylor. So they start the game out, and when they went nickel on defense with Seattle, they were running the ball with Jonathan Taylor. Then all of a sudden, Ken Norton Jr. Tries to do some creative things, put some 3 defensive tackles in, and all of a sudden the running game was gone. So that's got to be concerning. You can see that Xavier Rhodes being out affected their ability to cover the pass. But where the big worry is the schedule. The schedule is brutal. They open up the season. They got the Rams this week. They had Seattle. They have 5 games against teams that won 10 or more last year. And that's going to be tough to overcome, particularly, they're not going to be 100%, and they're going to have, some issues on the offensive line. Wentz, of course, goes into the game. He only had 4 practices, so there was going to be some rust and some issues there. They don't have their best receiver, T.Y. Hilton, and they're not real good at tight end. Jack Doyle's just real average. So I think you got to be concerned. But the big thing for them, as talented as they are, and as good of a team as they are, is the schedule.
The Colts are number 1. Another team that I think a lot of people like, but you think there's some reason to worry, Tennessee. This is a playoff team the last couple of years, maybe a Super Bowl contender when they went out and got Julio Jones. Why should they worry?
Well, why they should worry is that they made a lot of changes on defense, and the defense, was like 5th worst in the league as far as yards allowed last year, but then they come back and they give up 37 points to Arizona. I mean, the coverage in the secondary was not good. They still struggle to get any kind of a pass rush. So they've got 2 changes on the defensive line. That's concerning. And then, certainly, they got the talent on offense, but the fact that Taylor Lewan had the worst game of his career, giving up 5 sacks to Chandler Jones, wasn't good. And Tannehill didn't get a chance to really, get the ball downfield or do anything. So they're certainly, I think, right now still in a position to win the division, but they've got to have some concerns.
John Clayton, the Washington Post, these are teams that already need some concern. One of them, the Baltimore Ravens, another team that had some Super Bowl aspirations. We saw them on Monday night. They had a chance to win that game in Vegas, but they leave 0-1. So why are they worrying?
Well, because, again, what do they have left on offense? I mean, they lose 3 running backs for the season, their top 3 running backs. Now they're down to pretty much undrafted guys and picking guys off the street like Latavius Murray. Then you look at the fact that Nick Boyle, their second best tight end, he's on injured reserve, so they can't go 2 tight ends. The first round pick, he's on injured reserve, because and so that's not good. And then after the game, they find out that their left guard is going to pretty much miss a season with a knee injury. So what's left there on offense? Because again, when you're down that many players, that many starters, I mean, you're in trouble. To a point right now where, they still can make the playoffs, but you position them now number 3 in the division, not number 2. Pittsburgh, of course, going to Buffalo and winning, puts them at number 2. Cleveland, I still think, is number 1. But again, when you lose that many players, it's brutal.
Yeah, San Francisco went through that last year, and you have them as a worry team after week 1 this year. They're going to come to Philadelphia this week, so they got to travel all the way across the country. but they've lost a couple guys to injury. So why do the 49ers need to worry so early in the season?
Well, actually, they don't have to travel that far because they went down to the Greenbrier, so they just have to make the trip up north to Philly. So it's like that's not as bad. But where the concern is the injuries are creeping in for another year. I mean, you look at the fact that here's Jason Barrett, their best cornerback. He blows out an ACL. Emmanuel Mosley, he ends up missing the game with a knee injury. And then they already have Raheem Mostert, one of their best running backs. I mean, he's out for the season with a knee injury. They go with Jeff Wilson, who is on the injured reserve list. And then, they're losing too many players. They did the same thing last year. They had 131 missed starts last year, and now here they are, with a secondary that is now almost totally revamped if Mosley can't play. And you saw it in the game that here they're winning 38-10 over a bad Detroit team, but then, Jimmy Ward gets banged up, and so there's nobody left in the secondary, and so they had a bunch of young guys out there, and the next thing you know, here's Detroit making a 41-33 game. I mean, the big thing with the 49ers, they're talented, but they're injured. And then Javon Kinlaw, still his knee isn't right from last year, and he's not playing the same, and he was the first-round pick that they picked up when they traded DeForest Buckner, which I think was a bad trade for the 49ers.
John Clayton, the Washington Post. These are good because a lot of these teams, John, had a lot of high expectations. Tennessee, Indianapolis, San Francisco, Baltimore, and then there's the Bears. They seem to be the whipping boy across the country because of the way they're handling this quarterback situation. But what should the Bears be worried about? This is a team that did make the playoffs last year.
Yeah, but again, it's like they made the playoffs because you have 7 spots, because they're 8-8. Were they really a playoff team? I question that. And now they've got the worst offensive line we've probably seen in many years. Because you'll appreciate they got Jason Peters out there at left guard. He didn't last long because of a groin injury. His backup, he gets a knee injury, so he's out. And then, of course, their right tackle is Elijah Wilkinson, who's an undrafted guy. And so all of a sudden, there's no protection. And Andy Dalton couldn't get the ball downfield. I mean, he threw 38 passes. He averaged 5.61 per attempt. And I think the longest pass he was able to throw because of the lack of time was, 17 yards. So there has to be some concern there.
John, I know the two teams that play on Thursday night didn't make your list of worry, but Washington's already lost their quarterback. The Giants' quarterback fumbled away a chance to win that game against Denver. How big is the Thursday night game in the NFC East?
Oh, it's huge because, again, it's like, you've got two teams that didn't win last year. I know Washington won. They've got a good defense, the better defense of the two, and the Giants are real good on the defensive line, but certainly the quarterback change doesn't help. Jones continues to make turnovers. That doesn't help. But you got to win and at least stay in there because, again, I know that both of the two, it's probably more important for Washington because the way the schedule works right now. So the Giants' schedule isn't that tough, but Washington's a lot tougher because they got the first place schedule and they've got to play Buffalo, they've got to play Pittsburgh, so they've got to play first place teams. They've got to play Seattle. And so now their schedule's tougher where the Giants have an easier schedule. As you know, the Eagles have the easiest schedule in the league, and then the Dallas Cowboys the second easiest. And so in the end, it's probably more important for Washington to win, but can they do it with Taylor Heineke?
I'm going to get your take on the NFC West because you talked about the Niners. All 4 teams won out there: Seattle, Arizona, the Rams, San Francisco. So of the 4, who stood out the most?
Seattle. And then the Rams, number 2. The big thing for Seattle is just how much better they look on defense and also the improvements they have on offense. I mean, so now that they're running the Ram 49er type offense with Shane Waldron, I mean, you can see there's a better tempo, a better pace. They run the ball real well. Chris Carson had 91 yards. Then their defense put good pressure on Carson Wentz. They did adequate in the secondary. Their linebacking core has more speed right now. And so they look good. I thought they were probably the most efficient of the teams when you look at the Rams. And now, again, a lot of it had to do with the fact that they're playing the Bears. But also, I mean, you can see that Matthew Stafford was able to take advantage and really destroy a Bears defense, which theoretically is supposed to be good. So So that looks encouraging. San Francisco, of course, they didn't play anybody. They played Detroit. And then, of course, Arizona getting a great win on the road in Tennessee. That had to be huge.
Yeah, a couple more with John Clayton because there's some interesting other stories from Week 1. The Saints go out and clobber Green Bay. That one was in Jacksonville, so it wasn't like, they were in New Orleans. It was loud there, and, what happened to the Packers? They gave up 38 points.
Yeah, they seemed disinterested. And, again, they gave 38 points. And it wasn't like Jameis Winston was passing the ball like crazy. I think he only threw like 25 passes, but he had 5 touchdown passes. And, one of the strengths you would think of the Packers, because all they do is draft cornerbacks, is their pass coverage, and it just wasn't there. Then, of course, you can see that Aaron Rodgers, he didn't play as well. I mean, he had a bad game. I just think there's a lot of internal problems on the Packers, and why I didn't include them is because they play Detroit this week. So on a Monday night game, they'll bounce back and win that one. But that's a team to watching, because I do think they have internal problems, and that could really cost them the season. And the only advantage that they have is right now the NFC North looks so bad. All teams in the NFC North lost.
Last one for John. Week 2, we have Philadelphia beating Atlanta 32-6 very handily. I feel like every time I turn around, someone's talking about Jalen Hurts. So people are talking about what the Eagles look like. And then they throw in what you kind of just threw in there is, well, they played Atlanta. How do you look at the way Philadelphia looked against I don't know, I'm going to say an inferior opponent? Most people thought the Falcons were going to win that game.
No, Falcons are they're in a total turnaround right now. I mean, sure, they got Matt Ryan. They've made adjustments at receiver. You can see how bad they looked on defense. And, I just looked at that as being one of the 5 worst teams in football right now. So it was an important win for the Eagles. But, again, I look at the opponent and say it should have been a win.
John Clayton, The Washington Post, the NFL Week 2. It starts tomorrow night, and you can listen right here on 97.3 ESPN Thursday Night Football. A lot of great takes. Check out his Washington Post column each and every week. He's got 5 teams that need to worry after Week 1. Check him out at thewashingtonpost.com. John Clayton, thanks, pal.
Thank you.